The Intercontinental Grand Ballroom shimmered like a fallen galaxy. Crystal chandeliers dripped from the ceiling in cascades of light. Silk gowns brushed against polished marble floors. Laughter sparkled like champagne bubbles rising in crystal flutes. And in the center of that glittering universe stood Zola Dabo, feeling like an imposter in her own skin. Her emerald silk dress hugged her frame perfectly, tailored to precision. On paper, she belonged here. Led strategist, rising star, architect of a billion-dollar merger proposal. But across the room stood the man who had once convinced her she was nothing. Marcus. He was laughing, effortless, charismatic, magnetic. The same laugh that once made her heart race now made her stomach twist. A statuesque blonde in crimson clung to his arm, and yet his eyes kept drifting back to Zola, watching, measuring, enjoying. The air in her lungs thinned. She needed to breathe. She needed to disappear. The man by the window. That's when she saw him. Near the velvet drapes by a floor-to-ceiling window overlooking the city skyline stood a man untouched by the chaos of networking and desperate ambition. Tall, still, composed. He wore a dark, custom-fitted suit that whispered power rather than shouting it. Sharp cheekbones. Calm eyes. A glass of whiskey catching chandelier light. He wasn't performing. He was observing. Korean, she guessed. There was something about him that felt immovable, like a mountain in a storm. Desperation can make brave people reckless. Zola smoothed her dress, walked toward him, heart hammering. He saw her approach. Didn't look surprised, just curious. She stopped in front of him, and suddenly felt very small. "I have a strange request," she whispered. "Could you dance with me? My ex is watching." His eyes flicked past her, rested on Marcus, then back to her. A slow smirk curved his lips. He set his whiskey down, extended his hand. "His poor taste," he said smoothly, "would be my pleasure." And just like that, her world shifted. The dance. The orchestra began a slow, romantic melody. He didn't pull her close immediately. He held her with respect, one hand firm at her lower back, the other holding hers like porcelain. It felt more intimate than anything Marcus had ever given her. He moved with quiet mastery, guided, not controlled, anticipated, not dominated. Zola found herself floating, breathing, alive. She looked up at him. "Zola," she said. His smile transformed him. "Jean Woo." His voice was velvet in gravity. "You're safe with me." Safe. The word hit deeper than she expected. When had she last felt that? The confrontation. The song ended. Marcus appeared. Smug. Cruel. "Finding new toys already, Zola?" Before she could respond, Jean stepped slightly in front of her. No aggression. No raised voice. Just presence. "I believe," Jean said quietly. "We were having a private moment." Something flickered in Marcus' eyes. Fear. Then he scoffed and retreated. Zola stared at the stranger beside her. "Who are you?" She had no idea, but she would. Monday morning. The boardroom was colder than the ballroom. Sterile. Unforgiving. Today was everything. The Dahayan Group merger. 6 months of work. Her promotion on the line. Mr. Henderson stood proudly. "It is my honor to introduce the new CEO of Dahayan Group." Zola lifted her gaze, and her blood ran cold. Jean Woo walked in. Not a stranger. Not a random billionaire guest. The CEO. The man who now controlled her future. Their eyes met. Recognition. Calculation. Fire. He took the head seat. The seat of power. And the war began. Zola stood at the podium, her voice steady despite the chaos inside her. The man she had trusted in a moment of weakness now held her career in his hands. Was he amused? Was he disappointed? Was he testing her? She didn't know. But she would not fall. Not again. And as Jean Woo leaned back in his chair, eyes locked on her with unreadable intensity, the battlefield was officially drawn. The boardroom applause was polite, professional, measured, but Zola felt it like static across her skin. She had survived the introduction. That was all. Jean Woo, CEO of the Dahayan Group, had not smiled, had not acknowledged the dance, had not betrayed a single flicker of familiarity. He asked sharp questions. Brutal questions, precise questions. And when she answered them without faltering, he gave a single nod. Approval. That nod meant more than applause. But across the table, Isabella was watching, calculating, and Zola knew the war had begun. Wednesday, 2:17 a.m. The first blow came silently. No raised voices. No public humiliation. Just absence. Zola opened the master financial projection file. Blank. Not partially erased. Not glitched. Gone. Replaced by strings of corrupted symbols. Her pulse slowed instead of quickened. That calm? That was dangerous. This wasn't an accident. This was execution. She checked backups. Gone. Server restore points. Tampered. Her stomach dropped. 6 months of work. Hours from executive review. This wasn't sabotage. This was attempted career murder. Chloe arrived with 2 coffees and one look at Zola's face. What happened? They wiped it. Chloe went very still. Who? Zola didn't answer. She didn't need to. For 36 hours, they rebuilt the model from raw data, spreadsheets, source files, manual recalculations. No sleep, no mercy, no mistakes. When Zola finally stood in the presentation room Friday afternoon, dark circles under her eyes, hands steady, voice clear, Jin-Woo watched her like a scientist observing steel under pressure. He asked harder questions than before, almost punishing. But when she dismantled each one, his gaze shifted. Approval, not sympathy. Respect. Isabella's jaw tightened. She hadn't expected Zola to survive. Friday morning, company-wide email. New short-term consultant joining the merger team. Marketing Synergy Division. Marcus Davis. Zola stared at the screen. Her breath went shallow. No coincidence was this precise. He walked in at 9:17 a.m. Confident, charming, predatory. Zola, he smiled, leaning casually against her desk later that day. You look tired. She didn't rise to it, didn't look up. He leaned closer. You always did take things too seriously. Gaslighting in silk packaging. Her nails pressed into her palm under the desk. Please remove yourself from my workspace, she said evenly. He chuckled. Oh, relax. I'm just here to help. Across the office, Isabella watched. Satisfied. It was subtle, brilliantly subtle. Marcus began questioning minor details in meetings. Oh, I thought Zola's numbers were different yesterday. Is she feeling okay? You've seemed stressed lately. Tiny seeds, planted publicly, watered by doubt. And Isabella? She corrected Zola mid-sentence, interrupted her, reframed her work as collaborative, smiled while doing it. The board began watching Zola more carefully, waiting for cracks. Chloe slammed a file onto Zola's desk one evening. She's trying to destabilize you. I know. And him. Weaponized. Zola leaned back in her chair, exhaustion pressing into her bones. She thinks I'll break. Chloe's eyes hardened. Will you? Zola turned toward the glass wall of the conference room. Jin-Woo stood inside, speaking quietly with Henderson. Calm, immovable, watching everything. No, she said softly. I won't. Jean never intervened, never shielded her publicly, never favored her. He was colder now than he had been on the dance floor. But sometimes, in the elevator, across the boardroom, when Marcus made one of his calculated remarks, Zola would feel it. His gaze, not protective, assessing, testing, waiting. He wasn't going to save her. He was waiting to see if she could save herself. And strangely, that strengthened her. The breakthrough, Thursday, 11:42 p.m. The office was empty. Zola stared at server access logs. Something wasn't aligning. The IT explanation, power surge, was too convenient. She cross-referenced building fob entries, timestamps, employee login credentials. Then, there it was, 2:17 a.m., finance server login, under a junior analyst credentials. But that analyst fob showed no building entry after 6 p.m. Another fob accessed the floor at 2:12 a.m. Isabella's. Zola sat back slowly, ice sliding through her veins. It wasn't proof, but it was a thread, and she was very good at pulling threads. The final piece came unexpectedly. Inter-office envelope. No return address. Flash drive inside. Chloe locked the door. Zola plugged it in. One audio file. She pressed play. Isabella's voice. Cold. Sharp. He's just a pawn, Marcus. Do what I tell you. Rattle her cage. Make her look unstable. When I get the promotion, you'll be compensated. Silence filled the office. Chloe exhaled first. She's finished. Zola didn't smile. Not yet, because she knew something critical. Power is not in possession of truth. It's in timing. The invitation. 4:08 p.m. Calendar alert. Project update. Jean Wu. Location. Executive office. Alone. Her heart pounded harder walking into his penthouse office than it had walking into the gala. City lights stretched endlessly beyond the glass walls. He stood by the window. Like that first night. Zola, he said. No formality now. Tell me what's really happening. It wasn't accusation. It wasn't curiosity. It was invitation. She walked forward, placed a flash drive on his desk. It's complicated. His eyes darkened slightly. I'm not afraid of complicated. A beat of silence. Then she spoke. Every detail. Every log. Every manipulation. Marcus. The email smear campaign forming. The psychological destabilization attempt. When she finished, he picked up the flash drive, turned it slowly. You came to me, he said quietly. Yes. Why? Because you're the only one powerful enough to end this. Because you saw me. Because you didn't treat me like I was fragile. Because when you said I was safe, I believed you. But she said only, because you value truth. A long silence. Then, his jaw tightened. In my world, loyalty is everything. His voice lowered. Betrayal is dealt with. He stepped around the desk. Close now. Very close. I suspected interference, he admitted. The statistical improbability of your constant near failures. You were testing me. Yes. She didn't flinch. Did I pass? A slow, dangerous smile. You didn't break. He leaned slightly closer. That's rare. Her pulse quickened. What do we do now? His eyes gleamed. Now! A predator's calm. We let her build her own gallows. The plan. They would pretend nothing changed. Zola would continue appearing strained. Isabella would escalate. The final merger approval meeting was next Friday. Joint presentation. Isabella would attempt a public execution. They would let her, and then they would destroy her with her own ambition. Late-night strategy sessions began. After hours, private elevator, city lights as witness, takeout containers on billion-dollar desks. Professional turned personal. He spoke of rebuilding his family's disgraced empire, of relentless discipline, of never forgiving betrayal. She spoke of Marcus, of slowly losing herself in emotional erosion, of fighting to rebuild. One night, she was packing up, exhausted. He stopped her. You're doing well. I just want it over. He reached forward, brushed a stray eyelash from her cheek. Electricity. His hand lingered, just slightly too long. The air thickened. Soon, he murmured, and stepped back. The night before war. 11:13 p.m. Her phone buzzed. Jean, are you ready? Zola, as I'll ever be. Pause. Then, Jean, I'm downstairs. Her pulse skipped. He wasn't in a suit. Black cashmere sweater. Less CEO, more man. He took her to a quiet jazz bar. Dim, intimate, honest. I have a confession, he said. The gala. I knew who you were. Her glass paused midair. You did. I researched key players. He leaned forward, but I didn't expect courage. Silence stretched. You were testing me from beginning. Yes. And you're not a survivor, Zola. His eyes locked onto hers. You're a queen. The words settled into her bones. Afterward, he walked her home. Under the entrance light, he cupped her face. Tomorrow, he said softly, you take back your power. Then he kissed her. Not tentative, not uncertain. Certain, deep, claiming. When he pulled back, rest, he whispered. You have a war to win. Morning sunlight would turn the boardroom into a battlefield. Isabella believed she was sharpening the blade. Marcus believed he would watch her fall. But Zola no longer stood alone, and Jean Woo was done observing. The main boardroom felt less like a corporate space and more like a coliseum. Sunlight poured through the towering glass windows, cutting sharp beams across the long mahogany table. Every chair was filled. Board members, senior executives, legal counsel, Marcus, Isabella, Zola, and at the head of the table, Jean Woo, immovable, expression carved from stone. The final merger approval meeting. Billions on the table. Careers hanging in the balance. Reputations waiting to either rise or burn. The opening move. Isabella began the presentation. She was flawless. Voice smooth. Confidence polished. Data seamless. She moved through the slides like a conductor commanding an orchestra. And subtly, she absorbed Zola's research into her narrative. We identified synergies across financial and operational verticals. Zola stood beside her, hands folded, playing her part. Quiet, controlled, slightly subdued. Marcus leaned back in his chair, watching, waiting, smiling faintly. The knife, halfway through, Isabella slowed, adopted a grave tone. While the projections are strong. Pause. But as senior leadership, we must also address internal risk. A new slide appeared. Emails. Highlighted sections. Timestamps. The room shifted. Zola read the header. Her name. A message allegedly sent to a competitor. Sensitive financial details shared. Confidential merger projections. A corporate death sentence. Gasps rippled around the table. Mr. Henderson turned pale. Marcus didn't hide his satisfaction. Isabella folded her hands, feigning regret. I discovered this late last night. It appears Miss Adabo's personal instability may have led to a catastrophic lapse in judgment. Silence detonated. This was not sabotage. This was execution. The calm. Zola felt something unexpected. Stillness. Not fear. Not panic. Just clarity. She slowly turned her head. Jean Woo met her gaze. He didn't speak. Didn't rescue her. He gave one subtle nod. Now. Zola stepped forward. That, she said evenly, is a very serious accusation. Her voice cut through the air like glass. And a very clumsy fabrication. Every eye turned to her. Marcus straightened. Isabella blinked. What are you implying? Isabella asked coolly. Zola picked up the presentation remote. Clicked. New slide. Technical metadata. IP addresses. Server routing logs. For those unfamiliar with email forensics, Zola continued, every email contains traceable origin data. The message displayed originated from a terminal in the marketing department. Another click. Zoomed in data. Specifically, the workstation assigned to Mr. Marcus Davis. The room shifted violently. Marcus' smirk evaporated. That's absurd, he started. Please, Zola interrupted calmly. I'm not finished. The dissection. She moved clinically, like a surgeon. Precise. Unemotional. The alleged email had been spoofed. Header inconsistencies. Metadata alterations. Timestamp manipulation. All sloppily done. Whoever fabricated this, Zola said softly, underestimated my understanding of digital audit trails. A murmur passed through the legal team. Isabella's composure began to crack. This is deflection, she snapped. Zola clicked again. New slide. Server access logs. 3 weeks ago, the master financial projection file was corrupted. Board members leaned forward. IT attributed it to a power surge. Click. Security fob records. However, the finance server was accessed at 2:17 a.m. Click. Employee building access logs. The junior analyst whose credentials were used was not in the building. Pause. Click. Another fob accessed the floor at 2:12 a.m. She looked up, locked eyes with Isabella. The fob belonged to you. Silence. Absolute. Isabella's breathing sharpened. That proves nothing. You're correct, Zola said. By itself, it proves little. She set down the remote, reached into her folder. pulled out a small flash drive. And that is why I brought this. The final blow. Zola turned toward Jean. With your permission. He nodded. Once. The audio played. Isabella's voice filled the room. Cold. Calculated. He's just a pawn, Marcus. Rattle her cage. Make her look unstable. Once I get the promotion, you'll be compensated. The words echoed. Raw. Undeniable. Marcus' face drained of color. Isabella stood abruptly. This is illegal. This is entrapment. It's self-defense, Zola replied evenly. Mr. Henderson shot to his feet. Security. 2 officers entered swiftly. The illusion shattered. Isabella looked at Jean. Desperate. Jean, you can't seriously. His voice was quiet, deadly calm. In my company, he said, loyalty is non-negotiable. She realized then. He had known. He had watched. And she had been walking into a trap. She believed she set herself. Security escorted her out. Marcus tried to speak, but no one listened. The doors closed. And just like that, the war ended. The aftermath. The boardroom sat in stunned silence. Mr. Henderson exhaled slowly. Miss Adabo, I owe you an apology. Zola didn't gloat, didn't smile. She simply nodded. I appreciate that. The legal team immediately began discussing disciplinary proceedings and potential litigation. The merger vote resumed. Unanimous approval. Applause followed. This time, it felt different. Earned. The quiet victory. An hour later. Jean's office. City skyline stretching endlessly beyond glass walls. Zola stood before him again. This time not as a suspect, not as a subordinate, but as a victor. He signed the final merger documents. Closed the folder. It's done. She exhaled, relief washing through her like sunlight. I have also approved a promotion. She froze. Senior project director. You will head merger integration. The room blurred for a second. Thank you, she whispered. He stepped around the desk. Stopped close to her. Closer than professional protocol allowed. You didn't just defend yourself, he said quietly. You protected this deal. His eyes softened. I misjudged one thing. She blinked. What? I thought I was testing you. A small smile curved his mouth. It appears you were testing me. Her breath caught. And you passed. He brushed his thumb lightly against her jaw. Soft. Possessive. I told you he had poor taste. A memory of the ballroom. The dance. She smiled faintly. You're very confident. I'm very certain. He leaned in, kissed her, not the desperate kiss from the night before. This one was slower, intentional, claiming not ownership, but partnership. When he pulled back, there was something new in his gaze. Not just admiration, not just desire. Decision. You've taken back your power, he murmured. She looked out at the city lights. Endless. Alive. I think, she whispered. I'm just getting started. But power never rises without consequence. Isabella wouldn't go quietly. Marcus had nothing left to lose. And Jean Wu had enemies far beyond boardrooms. The merger was approved, the promotion secured. But outside that glass tower, forces were already moving, watching, waiting. Victory is loud. Retaliation is quiet. The week after Isabella's public downfall, the company buzzed with whispers. Some congratulated Zola. Some feared her. Some avoided eye contact altogether because she had done something rare. She had destroyed someone powerful. And people never forget that. Marcus' disappearance. Marcus was terminated immediately. But termination wasn't silence. 3 days later, an anonymous blog post appeared online. Senior executive framed in corporate espionage scandal. The article painted Isabella as a scapegoat, suggested internal corruption, implied favoritism between Zola and Jean Wu. The comments section ignited. Rumors moved faster than facts. By noon, financial bloggers picked it up. By 3 p.m., stock analysts began asking questions. By 5 p.m., Henderson's office was in crisis mode. Zola stood in her new office, larger, glass-walled, symbolic of her rise. Chloe stormed and holding her phone. It's Marcus. It has to be. Zola already knew. He had lost status, money, control, and wounded narcissists are the most dangerous species in existence. The emergency meeting, the executive crisis meeting, convened within the hour. Legal teams, PR strategists, board members. Gene sat at the head of the table, calm, almost bored. The PR director spoke rapidly. This narrative suggests collusion between Ms. Adabo and Mr. Wu prior to the merger vote. All eyes shifted subtly toward them. Zola felt the weight. She didn't look at Gene. Didn't need to. His voice cut through the noise. Is there evidence? No. Then there is no story. But perception is managed, he interrupted coolly. Silence followed. He turned to Zola. Would you like to address this? It wasn't a test of innocence. It was a test of strength. She straightened. The narrative implies I advanced due to personal involvement. Her voice was steady. My work product, documented performance logs, and forensic evidence speak for themselves. A pause. If we respond emotionally, we validate gossip. If we respond with data, we control it. Gene's gaze held hers. Approval. Prepare the documentation, he said. Release nothing defensive. Release facts. Crisis contained, but not ended. The warning. That night, Zola found a small envelope slipped under her apartment door. No stamp. No return address. Inside, a printed photo. Grainy. Taken outside the jazz bar weeks ago. Gene and Zola walking together. Intimate proximity. On the back. Careful. Queens fall harder. Her breath slowed. Not fear. Assessment. Someone was escalating. This wasn't Marcus alone. This felt strategic. She called Gene. He answered on the first ring. Did you receive something? He asked. Her stomach tightened. Yes. Silence. Then, stay where you are. I'm coming. The hidden layer. He arrived within 15 minutes. Not alone. A black SUV idled outside. 2 men remained inside. Security. Professional security. She hadn't realized until now. Gene Wu wasn't just a corporate executive. He operated differently. He entered her apartment, took the envelope, examined the print quality, the ink, the cut edges. This isn't Marcus, he said quietly. Then who? He looked at her carefully. There are competitors who oppose this merger. Her pulse quickened. You think they're trying to destabilize you? Destabilize the company. A beat. You are now visible. The weight of that settled. Power had made her a target. The truth about Gene. She watched him as he studied the photo. There was something else in his stillness. Something older. Harder. Gene, she said softly. What aren't you telling me? He didn't deflect. Didn't dodge. My family once controlled a global shipping empire, he said. It collapsed after internal betrayal. Hostile acquisition. Legal warfare. His eyes darkened slightly. I rebuilt from nothing. And now some of the men who lost when I returned would prefer I disappear. The room felt smaller. You're not just fighting corporate rivals. No, he met her gaze. I'm fighting men who believe power is inherited, not earned. Silence stretched between them. You should step back, he said finally, until this stabilizes. Her jaw tightened. Do you want me to? His voice lowered. No. She stepped closer. Then don't ask me to. That was the moment. The shift from attraction to alliance. The first crack. 2 days later, the company's servers experienced a coordinated cyber attack. Temporary shutdown. Stock dip. Media frenzy. Coincidence? No. Targeted. Zola worked beside IT for 16 hours straight. Coordinated internal damage control. Reassured department heads. She didn't retreat. Didn't hide. Gene observed her the entire time. At 2:40 a.m., exhausted, she finally leaned back in her chair. Whoever is doing this, she said quietly, they think pressure will fracture us. Gene stepped behind her, rested his hands lightly on the back of her chair. Pressure reveals composition. She looked up at him. And what are we made of? A faint, dangerous smile. Still, the threat reveals itself. 3 days later, an official acquisition rumor hit the financial press. a rival conglomerate, was allegedly preparing a hostile takeover bid. Anonymous investors, shadow capital, and one name surfaced in quiet circles. Park Industries, Gene's former rival, led by a man who had once tried to dismantle his father's company. This was escalation. Personal, strategic, calculated. "They're probing," Gene said during a late-night meeting, looking for instability. Zola studied the market reaction. If they can shake confidence, they can lower valuation. He nodded, and then quietly, she turned to him. "So we raise valuation." His eyebrow lifted slightly. Public expansion announcement. International contract reveal. Strategic alliance disclosure. A slow smile. "There's the Queen." The personal cost. The stress began taking its toll. Sleep shortened. Meals skipped. Public scrutiny intensified. And beneath all of it, their relationship simmered. But something unspoken hovered between them. One night, after another 14-hour day, she found him alone in the executive lounge. Jacket off, tie loosened, looking less invincible. She walked toward him. "You don't have to carry this alone." His gaze softened. "I've carried it alone for a long time." She stood in front of him. "And how has that worked out?" A pause. Then he reached for her, pulled her close, forehead resting against hers. "I don't want you hurt. I won't break." His hand moved to her waist. "You don't know that." She lifted her chin. "Neither do you." The kiss that followed wasn't about passion. It was about grounding, about choosing, about refusing fear. The attempt. 3 nights later, Gene's car was followed. Professional tail. Security detected it early. Diversion executed. Threat level raised. Now it was undeniable. This wasn't media harassment. This was strategic intimidation. Zola sat in the security briefing room listening. Her world had changed faster than she realized. "I can relocate you temporarily," Gene said quietly afterward. She stared at him. "Do you trust me?" "Yes." "Then stop trying to protect me from something I've already chosen." Silence. Then he nodded slowly. "You're stronger than they expect." Her eyes hardened slightly. "So are you." The shift. The board convened emergency defensive strategy. Anti-takeover provisions enacted. Public contract announcements accelerated. Market confidence restored. Stock rebounded. Park Industries pulled back. For now, it wasn't defeat. It was warning. War had layers. And this was only the opening. The real question. That night, they stood in his office overlooking the city. Lights endless. Alive. Dangerous. "You understand what this means," he said softly. She looked at him. "It means I don't just work for you anymore." A pause. "It means I stand with you." His hand reached for hers. Intertwined fingers. "For the first time," he murmured, "I'm not fighting alone." She leaned into him. "Good. Because queens don't stand behind kings. They stand beside them." The boardroom war was won. The corporate retaliation contained. But now, the battlefield had expanded. External enemies were watching. Gene's past was stirring. And someone powerful had just learned. Zola Dabo was not collateral. She was leverage. When powerful enemies retreat, it is rarely surrender. It is recalculation. 2 weeks after Park Industries pulled back its public acquisition probes, the market stabilized. Headlines faded. Stock recovered. Internal morale strengthened. To the outside world, the storm had passed. To Gene Wu, it had only repositioned. "They're not done," he said quietly one evening. Zola stood across from him, reviewing international shipping contracts. "Neither are we." He watched her carefully. There was no hesitation in her voice anymore. No trace of the woman who once asked a stranger to dance to escape humiliation. That woman had evolved, tempered by fire, refined by pressure. Now, she moved with intention. The hidden strike. It came at 3:12 a.m. Simultaneous moves. Anonymous investors began acquiring small blocks of the high-end stock across multiple markets. Layered purchases, masked through shell corporations. Not enough to trigger regulatory alarms, but enough to build influence. Gene's private analytics team Caught it within hours. Zola was called into the secure strategy room. Screens lit with market data, ownership maps, acquisition trails. They're consolidating quietly, she said after studying the pattern. Yes. Try and build leverage before announcing a hostile bid. He looked at her. What would you do? She didn't hesitate. Corner them first. A faint smile touched his mouth. Explain. Identify their liquidity exposure. If they're tying capital into this quiet acquisition, they're vulnerable elsewhere. She turned to another screen. Find their weak subsidiary. Strike publicly. Jean's gaze sharpened. Not just admiration now. Partnership. Proceed. The counterattack. Within 72 hours. Defy announced a strategic alliance with a European shipping conglomerate. Massive capital infusion. Expansion into new trade routes. Market valuation surged 18%. Simultaneously, a regulatory investigation into a Park Industries subsidiary went public. Not illegal, but damaging. Shareholders panicked. Park stock dipped sharply. Their capital liquidity tightened. The quiet acquisition of Dahian shares slowed, then stopped. They couldn't afford both wars. Gene stood in the boardroom as market screens flashed green. He didn't celebrate. He simply exhaled. Zola stood beside him. You just forced him into retreat. No, she corrected softly. We did. The personal reckoning. That night, the city skyline looked different. Not threatening. Not uncertain. Earned. Gene stood near the window again, like the night they met. Only this time, he wasn't alone. You knew I would choose aggression, he said quietly. I knew you wouldn't choose fear. He turned toward her fully. You've changed everything. She tilted her head slightly. That sounds dangerous. It is. He stepped closer. When I built this company, I built it with walls. She understood. And now I want something more permanent. The air shifted. This wasn't strategy. This wasn't business. This was decision. The offer. He walked to his desk, opened a folder, placed it before her. Not corporate documents. Not contracts. Blueprints. Architectural plans. A global expansion headquarters, he said. Joint oversight. She studied the documents. Her name was listed beside his. Co-executive authority on international development. This wasn't a promotion. It was elevation. You're offering me equity, she said slowly. Yes. Silence. Why? He stepped forward. Because you didn't want my protection. You wanted partnership. Because you stood in fire and didn't ask to be saved. Because I trust you. But he said only. Because empires are stronger when they're built by two. Her pulse deepened. This changes everything. I know. The final threat. Just when stability seemed secured, Marcus resurfaced. Desperate men do reckless things. He attempted to sell internal company information to a financial journalist, but he underestimated something. Gene's security team had been watching him since the smear attempt. The exchange was intercepted. Evidence secured. Legal action swift. Marcus disappeared from headlines as quickly as he had once tried to create them. This time, no blog posts. No anonymous threats. Just silence. The last loose thread cut clean. The choice. Weeks passed. The company stabilized fully. Expansion accelerated. Park Industries redirected focus elsewhere. The war was over. For now, one quiet evening, Gene took Zola back to the Intercontinental Ballroom. Empty this time. Silent. Lights dim. The chandeliers glowed softly above them. You remember this spot? He asked. She smiled faintly. I was terrified. You were brave. He extended his hand. Dance with me? She placed her hand in his. No desperation this time. No escape. Just choice. They moved slowly across the empty floor. No orchestra. Just the echo of footsteps and memory. You asked me to save you that night, he said quietly. I asked you to dance. And now, she looked up at him. Now I don't need saving. I'm not running anymore. He pulled her closer. And I'm not testing you anymore. Silence wrapped around them. Soft. Earned. The promise. Back in his office. City lights stretching endlessly. He stood before her. No games. No guarded tone. Stay, he said. Not command. Request. She searched his eyes. The powerful CEO. The strategist. The man who rebuilt an empire from ashes. And beneath it, the man who chose her. I will, she answered. But not behind you. A slow smile. Never behind. He kissed her. Not rushed. Not consuming. Steady. Certain. Outside, the city pulsed with life. Inside, a different kind of empire began forming. Not one built on acquisition. Not one built on fear. But one built on loyalty. Mutual strength. Shared power. The legacy. Months later, the international headquarters opened. Joint leadership announced publicly. Industry analysts called it bold, visionary, unconventional. They didn't know the half of it, because the real foundation wasn't in financial reports. It was forged in a corrupted file at 2:17 a.m., in a fabricated email, exposed in front of a board, in a jazz bar confession, in standing against fear instead of hiding from it. The camera would pull back, through the glass walls, over the skyline, beyond the tower, inside the office. Jean and Zola stand side by side, not king and subject, not rescuer and rescued, two forces aligned. He glances at her. Ready for the next war? She smiles calmly. Let them come. Fade out.